Hi, I'm Yasmin Owusu, and this is my producer, Charlie Kesenek.
But I'm your husband, and you're using all my stuff right now. What are you talking about?
So anyway, I've been looking for a one-stop shop podcast for wellness, amateur sociology, psychology, pop culture, and whatever else sparks my interest. So I created one. We are limited to no lanes. We hit the gas and get into it. This is Peaked. Press play. Hello and welcome to Peaked Podcast. I'm Yasmin and I'm back in my cozy nook, ready to talk about a topic. I don't know how many of you are aware, but recently there has been this little controversy about a tribute post that Kristen wrote to Dax Shepard, her partner. She's an actress. He's also in the entertainment business in many capacities. And they kind of have this like golden couple edit, I guess, where they have this opposites attract banter. And people consider them kind of like an unconventionally cute couple that we're all supposed to love. Their dynamic has always bothered me, at least their public facing dynamic, and I'll get into why. But recently they are actually getting some backlash for this post that she had. It was meant to be darkly humorous, so keep that in mind. But she said something along the lines of like, you've said that you could murder me and you're heavily incentivized to do so, but you don't. So yay, something like that, right? Seems pretty harmless overall. And I wouldn't say that particular thing really offended me that much. But I think, it rubbed people a certain way, probably because of a buildup of us noticing this dynamic between these two. And the interneted and found a bunch of interviews with them separately and them together that gave us a collective ick. And it just made me think of what exactly I'm hyper-focused on in their dynamic that's so bothersome. And it is my opinion that this dynamic's toxicity comes from the fact that I think that there are some covertly narcissistic traits that I'm perceiving in Dax Shepard. I am not at all qualified to diagnose anybody with anything. So this is just like an opinion that he reminds me of certain people that are covertly narcissistic. If you're not familiar with what that is, like narcissism itself, I think we're all familiar with. It's often from childhood trauma. It's a defense mechanism where people, their unconscious builds a grandiose personality to make themselves feel powerful, where at some point maybe in their life they felt powerless, right? So a narcissist will often use manipulation and abuse and control to feel powerful because I guess at some point in their life they didn't. And it's thought to be incurable. It's a cluster B personality disorder that, some people try to treat, I guess, with cognitive therapies, but is largely thought to be not a curable disorder. So covert narcissism is the same thing. I mean, internally, it's acting the same way. The tools and tactics that the covert narcissists use differ. And from what I've read, and I have my little notes, the reasoning for that is probably just as simple as it's just a more introverted personality, someone who's a little less socially apt. So they just tend to use passive aggression and more sneaky little Pete tactics than a grandiose narcissist. So while a grandiose narcissist would just openly berate somebody or call them stupid or say, I know how to do things better than you. I should never let you do anything because I'm better at it. A covert narcissist is more inclined to kind of maybe mutter or roll their eyes or give the silent treatment, stuff like that. It's just passive aggressive tactics, essentially. So like where a grandiose narcissist, if they were trying to be retaliatory or do something to, mess with your life, they would maybe just slash your tires or like do something aggressive like that. A covert narcissist would be more inclined to like not like withhold information, maybe. Like maybe they heard that somebody had a job opportunity, you're looking for a job and they won't tell you about it. Stuff like that. Now, what I'm noting with this I did watch a lot of these videos that people posted of like Kristen Bell and Dak Shepard. And what I've noticed in a lot of the interviews that he is taking, that he gave, was that he liked to push forward this narrative that he was super like whatever and was just like chill about them when they first started dating. And he was like, I was dating other people and like, I'm just like not that monogamous. And like, she was into her, like she's obviously super cool, but like I was kind of like, on the fence about it. And then she is very much like, yeah, like he did try to break up with me a couple times, but like I'm super persistent. And like, I was just dying to date him. It's like they have this dynamic where he kind of is verbally allowed to devalue her, and she plays into that and devalues herself, and that seems to be like a dynamic that's comfortable for them, which we don't love. We all had that dialogue about the cool girl when Gone Girl came out, and there's that whole long monologue about the cool girl, and she is kind of playing into that trope a bit where it's like you as a woman sometimes pretend to not be emotionally affected by certain behaviors that a man can have when you actually are, but you're just kind of trying to play it like cool and aloof because you don't want to seem too needy. It's some version of that, but then she's also kind of acting like, he's a prize and it's so obvious. And of course she's desperate to date him. This is not inherently something we can all agree on. I mean, she obviously is the more successful and well-known of the two of them. And I think as the higher earning. So, if you're a person that gets into all that status stuff, which, he's admitted many times on his podcast that status is a wound for him and it's something that he's like insecure about. So in what world are we supposed to believe that she's groveling to be with you? I mean, I guess we have to believe it because that's what they present to us. I think that's what's giving us all the collective ick, is they have agreed on a joint message that she is desperate to be with this person. And he is just kind of like, whatever, I guess, if you're nice and you like, don't make me change anything. And it's also just kind of a personality thing that I've noticed with him in general, where he, my dog is barking at people walking up the street, where he, even in interviews with other people, has a tendency to like use a lot of vulnerability and self-awareness about his toxic traits while not really seeming to think he needs to change them. So if he's interviewing another person, he'll be like, yeah, I'm really status obsessed. It's funny that he's always talking about himself when he's interviewing other people. It's a bit of a narcissistic trait. But he will say things like, yeah, I'm status obsessed. And like, I just tend to like, always kind of gauge my status with other people. That's not a great behavior. I don't know that just saying that that should be the end of it. I think maybe you don't jockey for status with every single person you meet. And maybe that is draining and like exhausting to be around, right? And then there's another where he has dyslexia. And so he has this wound or trigger, whatever you want to call it, around people thinking he's dumb. And so that creates a lot of behaviors that are insecure behaviors around his intelligence. Like he will sometimes be a know-it-all and like overtalk people. And, maybe sometimes, I don't know if he's admitted to like belittling other people, but maybe I've perceived that like he can be a little preachy and a little bit condescending at times. But he seems to think that if he's like, well, I'm dyslexic, and so people thought I was dumb, or like I felt like they thought I was dumb, so I have to do this because it makes me feel less insecure. And I don't know that that's how we metabolize that. I don't think we're done. I think we need to maybe not treat people who are not treating you like you're stupid like they are treating you like you're stupid. I think there needs to be like more work done on these things. And yeah, the reason that this struck me so much is because I have recently identified multiple covert narcissists in my own life. And I've had two very final, decided by me, friendship breakups with long-term friends because I've identified these traits of a covert narcissist. I've identified that two girlfriends that I've had, one for 15-ish years, but off and on because we weren't living in the same city for long periods of time, and the other one for around 20. Same thing. I moved a lot. And so we weren't always like super hot and heavy in our friendship. But in the last few years, we had been. And as I've started to identify that this is a blind spot of mine, covert narcissists are a blind spot of mine, I've had to kind of deep dive on why I am so vulnerable to them. Because I'm not vulnerable actually to narcissists. And I don't tend to get myself in romantic abusive relationships. I had a good example of a father, and I tend to actually, I haven't been in very many romantic relationships. I have always been quite cautious about that. And when I've picked partners, I've picked good people. My other long-term partner was a good person who I was not compatible with ultimately, but was not a toxic human to me overall. And my partner now currently is also not. But in friendships, I tend to have a blind spot around covert narcissists. And grandiose narcissists, I think that their traits are so transparent. They brag a lot, and, they love bomb, and they devalue people, and they just are constantly just like talking about their accomplishments. It's very Trumpy, like that personality, that Trumpy personality, I find really easy to identify. Whereas covert narcissists, because they so often present themselves in a vulnerable way, where they're always kind of talking about what they struggle with. Another term for covert narcissist is vulnerable narcissist. It's a term that means the same thing. Because they often do use their vulnerability as a manipulation tactic. And I think what I've realized is because maybe I have my own insecurity around maybe not being an emotionally available and good friend, or someone people can lean on, I have not been vigilant about my boundaries with certain people who present themselves as pitiable, which often covert narcissists do. They'll kind of be like, I am, someone who's struggled with this and I've struggled with that, and I'm always left out, or, they have a victim complex. So they'll always kind of be talking about how they're constantly in this state of being devalued or not liked, or left out, or, just undervalued in general. And so it puts me, because of whatever other perceived issues I have with certain emotional availability in relationships. I think I do consider myself guarded in many ways, largely because of how I grew up. Around certain people with chaotic entities, I can be guarded. I can be hypervigilant. And so I think I have an overcompensation of wanting to be non-judgmental, available, caring, and open to certain people. And it can be hard to identify when that is being abused. And I have recently, like I said, it's come to light that it is often being abused by certain characters in my life. And if you are someone who thinks that maybe this is some slippery thing that could get you, I can help identify some traits. So if there is someone that that is perpetually in crisis, they always have an ongoing, problem and issue, and just they're always in a dark place of some sort, and you find yourself unable to share your life or share things about yourself with them. They are not interested or taking an interest or aware of what's going on with you. Like, you could go on a vacation, they wouldn't ask you about it when you came back. You could meet up with them after your own wedding, and you'd just be talking about their coworker they don't like. There's a good there's a good chance that this could be someone with covertly narcissistic traits, if not an actual clinical covert narcissist. This was a behavior that I noticed in both of these people, two people that were very significant in my life that I've recently parted ways with. I've gone no contact with. that I would find myself just naturally predisposed to not sharing things in my life. I would just not expect to share anything. When I would meet up with these people, both of them separately, they don't know each other. They just are two people that I've attracted that have these traits. I would meet up with them and I would just sort of know I'm not going to be talking about things that are happening with me. They're going to talk about, those 2 or 3 people they're fixating on, who they're super envious of, or they believe they should have what these people have, or, they don't deserve it and I do. And, I'm always being like, slighted on this. And I knew that we would be talking about that. And another way that they, this could be just unique. I doubt it's unique to just these 2 people, but they both tended, so look out for this one. They both tended to want to make themselves essential to you in some way, provide some kind of service that they would then try to use to control you. In my case, one of them, when I moved to Austin, because I lived most of my adult life in New York, I didn't drive, right? So, I have Uber, I have my electric bike, and my partner, Charlie, drives. So I was able to get around largely. But they would offer me rides. And, when I first moved here, I was like, it's innocuous. I was like, yeah, sure. And then I just started to notice that there was this kind of vibe and dialogue around the offering of rides, where it's like they felt like they could dictate when I was leaving. And, if I want to take an Uber home, when they drove me there, they would act like they were being used or something and I should leave when they're leaving. They were trying to control what I did through the fact that they gave me this ride. And there were other little services like, taking care of my dog or whatever that I felt like were then used to guilt or like try to control my behavior in some way. So watch out for that. And then there's a tendency with these people to try to keep you isolated. And I know that's also just a narcissist trait in general. But they're sneakier about the isolation, right? So like a grandiose narcissist is going to be like, your family suck and your family hates you. And like, they've always like never loved you, whatever. So a covert narcissist is unlikely to be that explicit. I actually just think they're smarter half the time. And people say it's because they're socially awkward. I just think they're just better at manipulating. So they're more likely when they're trying to isolate you to just like never quite allow you to connect with other people in their lives. And they purposely don't connect with other people in your life. So when I would bring this one girl out around new people, I'd invite her to a dinner party or something, and there are other people there. She would just like purposefully get me into a very myopic conversation that only the 2 of us could discuss. So nobody else around could contribute, even though that's super awkward to do in a big group. But she would kind of lock me into a conversation about something only the 2 of us know about. And she would just kind of, box people out, both physically and verbally. And also would make it a point, if I was coming into a situation with a bunch of people that she knew, to not really make proper introductions. So it made it awkward for me to talk to them later. And I'd have to sort of aggressively go and introduce myself, which luckily for me, I'm down to do. But there were these attempts to like make sure that I never made connections within any other entity of her friends or, coworkers. Like she didn't want, she wanted, if I was spending time, it to have to be with her, right? So if I had other friends, she would make it awkward for me to be around them and her. And if she had other friends, she would make it awkward between us because she didn't want me to create more friendships and more connections. She has lived in Austin her whole life and I'm new to it. So rather than kind of connect me in the city and like, get me in with people and make new friends, she kind of just wanted to keep it to where it was just us all the time. So that's always a red flag. And I did find that when I decided to cut ties with this person, that a lot of the people that I'm friends with still were like, yeah, I don't know what was going on there. Like that girl was like pretty rude and she was really dismissive to us. And, I take accountability for the fact that I did find myself explaining this person a lot to people. Like, well, she might not be that welcoming when you meet her, but she's just socially awkward and she's going through a hard time. If you do find yourself explaining a person to everyone around you all the time, maybe try to really figure out how to explain them to yourself at some point, because you shouldn't really have to convince everyone that somebody is an okay person. It should be self-evident. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it just really became clear to me that this was a deep blind spot. And this dialogue around the Dak Shepard and whatever thing, it's when somebody's poor behavior is rooted in insecurity and in their narrative that they are a perpetual victim and that they are always being hurt by others and they're always the one wounded, it can really put you in this position where you can't identify that you are the one who is being wronged, because their narrative is so thick and their vibe is so draining and negative that you just kind of get sucked into it like a black hole. Every time you're around them, they're just talking about how, everything's easy for you and, everything's difficult for them. And, you have this partner and they don't. And it doesn't allow for any dialogue about what they could be doing that's antisocial, that puts them constantly in this position of rejection. They talk so much about the hurt about their rejection that we never actually discuss the root cause of their rejection, which is probably their behavior. I should say these two separate girls that I've parted ways with, that I guess, armchair identified as covert narcissists, they both had several friendship breakups in their past. And I don't mean what we all have, where you just kind of like lose touch with people over time and you just kind of, don't have the same interests, you move away, or, we peter out with people over our lives. Some people are for a reason and a season, sure. But these two women have had people send them emails, send them texts, sit them down and say, I do not want to continue this friendship. Multiple people. In the time that I knew the girl that I just spoke about, who was born and raised in Austin and I have become friends with since I've been here. In the short time, I've been here for 4 years. In the short time that I had been here, that I was friendly with her, every single person that was her bestie when I first moved here has ditched her one after the other. And in no uncertain fashion, have just been like, I don't want to hang out anymore. They said that verbally, or they have just straight up cut ties and stopped talking to this person. There's another sign. If a person has a hard time maintaining relationships with myriad people, all these people with different personalities, all these people who seem otherwise, functional. If all of these people are rejecting this person, maybe it's not because they just keep getting rejected and people are so cruel. Maybe this person is doing things to be antisocial and isolate themselves because of their own behavior. The other girl too, I have had nobody in my entire life call me, text me, message me, email me saying they don't want to be my friend anymore. That has literally never happened to me. This one girl that I was, friendly with in New York that I parted ways with, had that happen 3 times in a year. 3 times in a year, they had someone be like, listen, I just don't like the way you're treating me. Something that I also note, if I could really look back now, and I do look back now with the 2020 hindsight, if I look back throughout our entire relationship, both girls, it's very easy to identify that this person has zero respect for me. Very easy to identify. They give you a lot of compliments. That there's the love bombing. Even covert narcissists will do that. They'll be like, a lot of the compliments are how you're like them. Keep an eye on that one too. This is why we get along, because you and me we're both. But they're always talking crap about everyone else. And you'll meet these perfectly nice people in their life and they're like, oh, it's just a trash bag and drinks too much. And like, meanwhile, we're drinking. Anyway, but there may be a lot of compliments and there may be a lot of that like verbal affirmation of you in relation to them where like we're similar because we both have these good traits, but their behavior towards you and how they treat you overall lacks fundamental respect. Like one was perpetually hour and a half, 45 minutes late to meet up with me and was very unapologetic when they did, gave bad or no excuses for it. But then flip side, if I, for some reason, they felt like I was unreliable about something, it was just a dressing down. Like they would actually speak to me like a child and just be like, I don't think this is acceptable, blah, 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 blah. Like I'm leaving. I remember having to actually like curse this girl out because on my birthday that she had said she wasn't coming to, I'd invited her to my birthday. That was going to be a group hang at some random bar in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. She'd said she was not going to attend. Cool. So when I get to the day of my birthday and people are going to meet me at a certain time and I realize we're kind of running tight with the lunch and whatever other plans I have during the day, I reach out to everybody who is coming and I'm like, listen, I'm pushing it back about 30 to 45 minutes. So, I'm going to be there at this certain time. Everyone's very agreeable. Some people were like, I already headed to the area early. It's a bar. I'm going to have a few drinks and chill. This woman who said she wasn't coming, when I send out this message, is like, well, I'm going to be sitting here forever then because I took bus, whatever. Tries to basically dress me down on my birthday about this and is like talking to me like they can scold me like a child. And there were just there's lots of behavior like this. Also did this on my partner's, she likes to do this on birthdays, I guess. On my partner's birthday, similar thing where she invited herself along as my friend. This is not about either of us. It's my partner's birthday. She shows up to the place early. Everyone's still at dinner who was like actually invited. And now she's like, you guys need to come over here. I'm sitting here by myself and everyone's still at dinner. As though I'm going to like uproot all of my partner and his friends, like birthday plans for his birthday with his friends because my random friend who's invited themselves along has decided to show up early. Just bananas behavior like that, disrespectful behavior, and just complete hypocritical delusion about how they behave, right? So like you're constantly late, you're unreliable, but when anything kind of just doesn't go the way that you want it to, you feel entitled to dress people down and speak to them in this way. And also just there were certain times where if I ever did get the chance to talk about something going on in my life, or not even my life. For example, when I told one of these girls that my sister, who's a published author and her book has done really well, when I first told her about this book being published, she said something along the lines of like, yeah, Black stories are kind of getting propped up right now. So something like that. Like it's like she got affirmative actioned into having a really great book. And to say that to my face, it just shows this fundamental level of disrespect. But because this person constantly presented themselves in this sort of pathetic way, like nobody ever like looks at my accomplishments and, I've just, try all this stuff, but I guess I suck at it. Then you don't feel as inclined to point out their more aggressive and their more disrespectful behavior because you feel sorry for them and you feel like they're emotionally fragile and they're emotionally vulnerable. And I'm really training myself to notice that now and just understand with people in general, your issues do not excuse poor, toxic, abusive, and draining behavior. So we all make mistakes, yes, but consistently taking no accountability, consistently repeating this behavior while clearly having identified it, clearly knowing that you possess it, it can't be acceptable. And you don't help people by excusing their bad behavior, by explaining it away to other people. And I know it's funny that this is all kind of spearheaded by a simple anniversary post in pop culture. But, we're coming to the end of a year and I'm taking a lot of stock of my year, what's gone on. And I'm also as I like to mention a lot for whatever reason, I'm halfway through my life at 43. So I'm also kind of deciding what I want to bring to the next half of it and what I want to leave behind. And certainly covert narcissists and deeply draining, energetic vampires are something I want to leave in the past. And I would urge people like Kristen Bell, who are in a relationship that they continuously typify as being hard work and we don't agree on anything. And, we fight and everything is difficult because we don't see the same way. Relationships are not inherently supposed to be torturous. They're supposed to energize and not drain you. They're supposed to lend you support in your life. They're supposed to uplift you. They're supposed to enrich you. They are not supposed to drain you. They are not supposed to be tortured and forced. I'm telling myself this. Take from it what serves you. But yeah, it really did make me think heavily about what left me so vulnerable and open to this specific type of manipulation. And if you do, like me, have a bit of an insecurity and a personality type that sometimes you consider to be hard to get to know. And I think sometimes people have said to me that like I can be a little inscrutable, or when they first met me, they maybe thought that I was, aloof or hard to get to know. It can kind of make me overcompensate and then excuse a lot of toxic behavior from people who present themselves as needing more and needing someone to be compassionate to them. And ultimately, what I find is that these people entirely lack empathy, and there will never be any space for you in their psyche, in their day, in their time, in their mind. There's no space for anything but their own neurosis. And it's probably not a good idea to put your energy into a relationship like that. It will always be unfulfilling and ultimately damaging. So on that high note, I leave you with that. Look into covert narcissism. And again, I'm in no space to diagnose Dax Shepard. I'm just saying he reminds me a lot of covert narcissists. Till next time, bye from Pete.